to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about everything board game related. I am your host, Jeremy Salinas, aka Drakkenstrike, and today we're going to bring you a brand new game from a brand new publisher. We're talking about Mechs vs. Minions from Riot Games. And to help me introduce this game to you, I have my host with me, David Waybright.
Hello once again, everyone. I cannot tell you how excited we are. We have been like little kids with a secret for the last month and a half or so. Could barely contain ourselves. I think the theme for tonight is going to be overwhelming.
Yes.
In every sense of the word.
Absolutely. So let's talk to you guys about Mechs versus Minions. It is a brand new game that's coming out that is 2 to 4 players. It plays in roughly about an hour to 2 hours, depending on how badly you get beat down.
It is a tough game.
It is a programming cooperative game.
Cooperative programming
really
campaign.
Unique. With a campaign aspect to it. Really unique. This game is amazing. Let's get this out of the way. These are final components, production quality. This is probably the best looking production game we have ever seen.
Yeah, for me, absolutely. I was blown away by this. I mean, we won't go into the story in great detail, but we had a very special final day at Gen Con where this was revealed to us in its finished form, and we were absolutely blown away. I've never seen components like this. I mean, there's so many of them. They're so high quality.
Right.
The things that are painted that you wouldn't expect ever to be painted are.
Right.
It is really something to behold.
So we're going to walk through this in 3 steps. First, we're going to talk about the components. We'll walk through all of them with you guys. And then we're going to talk about the actual gameplay, which should be pretty simple to understand and to teach. And then we're going to give our final thoughts about the game. So first, let's talk about all the components. The first thing you'll notice on the screen, we've had the box coming up and showing you everything inside. This is a multi-layered game with all kinds of stuff in it.
Yeah, the box is, I don't know, probably 1.5 feet by 2+ feet, maybe.
Right.
And, as heavy as you can imagine. And here's the thing. This has trays that blow away most components.
Right.
I mean, these trays are molded so well. For instance, all of the little minion pieces in this game, there's a variety of them. Mm-hmm. And they've actually made the molds so no matter where you put them, they fit.
They all fit.
And they fit so nicely.
Yeah.
Like if you're expecting a mold that sometimes it's hard to pop out, they just sit beautifully in there. There was a great amount of care into not just the components, but the box and everything going on with this game.
So this is a scenario-driven game, and because it's a scenario-driven game, they give you 5 of these tiles, which will be changed and turned depending upon what scenario. You'll notice, or maybe not notice, but these are all spot gloss in some of the thickest cardboard I've ever seen.
And amazingly thick. And that spot gloss is something we started to see in the board game industry on a lot of boxes, but not quite as much as we see here and then all of the components.
Almost never on the components.
No, I can't think of another one where I've seen it on the components.
And these are double-sided as well. So as you progress through the campaign, you'll open up the secondary tiles, which play a little bit differently because there's some danger areas in them as well compared to these, to the regular tiles. Also, you'll notice on our board we have a starting tile, which is the school. So the background of the game, this is based off the League of Legends video game, or the MOBA.
Yeah.
And so it uses some of the characters from that, but it doesn't typically borrow from the MOBA aspect at all.
No, it's definitely not trying to recreate League of Legends.
Sure.
In fact, it's really setting itself apart. League of Legends is barely on the box.
Right.
It really wants to establish itself, and I think they have. It's Mechs versus Minions, so they have a few of the characters, and it'll be very familiar to people who have, who have familiarity with League of Legends. And then from the board game fan standpoint, if you've never heard of League of Legends, you'll just kind of be rolled over with what you're looking at.
Sure.
You'll want to get into League of Legends for sure.
So there is a school tile, which is typically placed on the board in a very specific area, which all of the mechs or yordles will be placed. There are 4 characters that you can play, and they're all pre-painted, look absolutely astounding. They're yordles in their little mechs, and these are the characters that you'll be controlling throughout the game. Also, each player will have a command board. The command board looks like this. It is a slot of 1 through 6 that you'll be able to use your command cards in order to program from left to right. You can actually lay your command cards wherever you wish, but when you enact the programs, they'll happen left and right. And we'll get into that portion as well. Why don't you walk them through these incredibly awesome 100 miniatures that are sitting here?
Well, so in addition to the four main characters, there's all these minions.
Yeah.
They are the minions in the Mechs versus Minions.
Right.
And one of the amazing things about these things, if you can see, and I'm sure we'll throw a picture up, when you see single color components usually, they don't have much depth to them. There's no really effects on them. They're gray. You can't see any of the detail. These effectively appear as though they have a wash on them.
Sure.
You know, so they have a darkness in all of the shady and shadowy areas, which, like, that alone...
Just looks phenomenal.
It really does look phenomenal, and they didn't just make one minion. I don't know how many different ones there are.
There's 4 unique ones, and there's 100 different minions.
Yeah, so there's 100 in total, and
four sculpts.
4 different ones, so that it keeps it a little fresh, so you're not looking at the exact same minion every time.
Sure. There's also some dice in the game. You have rune dice, which are marbled. It's like really effect. These are what will move the minions, and they'll also be rolled to spawn in different locations for the minions. And you have some also just marbled 1 through 6 dice, which will be used to slot bad stuff on your.
And if it sounds like we're gushing about this game, it is really hard not to. In fact, I would challenge anyone to look at this game and go, meh.
Yeah,
you know, there's not really, they didn't spare any expense on any one element of it.
You have an hourglass. Because the drafting portion of the game is timed.
Yeah, which is really cool. I mean, we'll get into the drafting element in a second, but the fact that it's timed has a really significant impact on the game. It really adds to the intensity.
Right.
Plus, since it's a cooperative game, it reduces the amount of analysis that's going on during that phase.
Right. You have command cards. We'll talk a little bit more about these as we get into how to play the game. And you have damage cards. For you guys that are board gamers that are watching these kind of act like the damage cards in X-Wing for you guys that are familiar. Damage isn't done with damage tokens. It's done with slotting very bad things on your program, which
basically makes an already challenging situation even more challenging because and fun. Your mech's just kind of going haywire because of the damage.
Down here we have the minion kill track and the doom tracker. The doom tracker is used in a couple different ways. One, to time the game out. In some scenarios, sometimes it deals with the boss. Yeah, we don't want to get into too much.
Try to avoid some spoilers, but it's going to be hard.
And then the minion kills, once you kill 5 minions, you move up on the gear track, which allows you to go into overdrive and use some of your special abilities in the game.
It's a really cool element that kind of brings that sort of computer gaming aspect into the mix, where you're leveling up during each scenario and activating powers on cards, and then there's a huge overdrive power if you get to 15.
And then you have all these top secret campaign things, and inside of here you have missions which you will go on, and then there's some extra goodies which we won't tell you about, but it's almost like a little bit of a legacy aspect to it.
It's somewhere in between campaign and legacy, in my opinion, because there are some the goodies in there where you're opening up and finding out, oh, look what we got, is definitely got that legacy vibe.
And it adds, each of these scenarios adds a little bit more mechanics to the game as you go, introducing you to new things that can happen in the game, new abilities for your characters, and schematics, which are typically either 1 or 2 or multiple shot cards that you can use in the game that are specific for your Yordle or your mech.
It's usually triggered off of that the gear track, the different schematics.
So those are the components. There's a lot of components in here. And guys, we're going to be very, very careful with telling you too much because there are a lot of secrets in the game that we want you guys to discover on your own. Even the way you play the game, there are some secrets. So we're going to go through just the very basics of how the game plays. It is a cooperative game. You are all playing together to defeat the mission. Like we said, it can be played with 2 to 4 players. There's not really a recommended amount to play with because of the drafting mechanism at the very beginning of the game.
Right, it does balance it out a little bit. I would say, I mean, in our experience, it feels like the more the merrier, and the more the better.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a 2 to 4 player game, and if you've never, like, if you're not a board gamer out there, this is a whole, the cooperative element to board games is relatively new. I mean, it's been around a few years now for sure. but it's really cool in a programming game. Have you ever seen a programming game that's
a co-op? No, not that I can remember.
It really helps out a little bit because a lot of programming games, that chaos can sometimes turn into disappointment because you're failing compared to your opponents. But in this, everyone's in it together. So that chaos is more fun.
Sure, absolutely. So the very first thing you're going to do in the game is you're going to have a double draft. You're going to draw 10 of these command cards, and you're going to lay them out in front of you, and each player in turn order is going to take 2 of them. So one at a time, one at a time, one at a time until each player has 2. That's the only time in the game that a player will start or each player will, at the same time, draft 2 of these cards. Let's talk a little bit about the command cards, because these are very important to the game. There are 4 different elements in the game, and they're labeled by their colors. You have blue, green, red, and yellow. And within those, there are 3 unique cards for each of those colors. These cards are going to be used to slot onto your program track. So at the very beginning of the game, when you draft, you're going to physically decide where these cards will be located on your board. Each of these 6 slots can have up to 3 cards on top of them because of the fact that these cards increase in ability with the more cards underneath of them.
Of the same type.
Of the same type, that's right. You can only put cards on your board if they are matching color. So in order to put another blue card to put another card on this slot, it'd have to be a blue one.
And then when you do that, the card that's on top is the power that you have there. It's the number of cards that then charge each card up. Each card has basically 3 levels of power, if you will. And it all depends on how many of that same color card you have stacked there, up to 3.
And these powers range from movement on the board to turning to allow you to do damage.
It's usually movement. Movement of all kinds. Then area of effect sort of attacks. Then there's some targeted attacks.
Very MOBA-like.
Very much. And very... everything you'd expect in a programming game, basically, in terms of ranged attacks and melee attacks and the movement.
So once everyone is done drafting, they're going to play their cards onto their board. Now, cards do have 2 effects to them. Either you can play them to your board or you can discard them. There is the ability to discard cards, and on the very bottom, you're not going to be able to read them here, but there's 2 different effects. One is to scrap the card in order to scrap damage off of your board. There's also the ability to swap programs. So if you discard one of these cards and it says swap on the bottom, you can physically take a program that's on 1 and another program that could be on 4 and swap them with each other. And the reason for that is because if you need to move in a location and that's on slot 4, these will enact in turn order, so you need to
you basically need to program and then reprogram and keep adjusting your program so that you're adjusting to the situation. A lot of these scenarios have you... It's not just about going out and killing all the minions. In fact, it is definitely not about that. You're trying to achieve goals while a complete onslaught of minions pours forth in almost all directions.
There's a reason why there's 100 minions in this game.
When you hear 100 minions, you're like, well, certainly they can't use all those. Yeah, you can.
They can. And then the next thing that's going to happen in turn order, the players will enact their programs from 1 to 6, doing whatever should happen. Through the course of the game, you're going to take damage. And how that happens is once everyone has taken their turn, they've enacted all of their programs by moving or shooting or doing whatever they may be doing, the next thing that's going to happen is the minion movement. Now, the minion movement, I wish I could explain it to you better, but it's different in every scenario.
Yeah, they change it up for sure, but in a general sense, they will often move
towards the school.
Toward the school or toward the players' characters. In the shortest route possible. So they'll move forward, and then if you're beside them, they will move that way toward you. So they're basically constantly progressing against what you're maybe trying to defend or toward you. So if you haven't killed a lot of them that are nearby, they are going to end up swarming you during their movement.
Once the minions move, they will attack, and they do damage, 1 damage to every mech that is adjacent to them orthogonally. So say, for instance, this minion would move up. It would do 1 damage to the character here. Now, damage is dealt with by cards. You draw the card, and this is the fun part. There are 2 kind of cards. There's one card with the garbage symbol. basically it tells you what to do. And it could tell you things like take program 4 and swap it with program 3.
Yeah, so it basically messes with your program. So what you've been planning on is then screwed up.
Yeah. The other thing are the slot cards. These, you physically enact the ability. This one says rotate 90 degrees. So you physically take your mech and rotate him 90 degrees. And then you're going to slot this on your board. So it'll happen every turn. Where you slot it depends upon the number die. You're going to roll it. Wherever it goes, it goes.
And every time you do that, I can tell you, you're hoping for, oh, please, not 5 and 6, not 5, or not 3 and 4. You know, you've got these certain sectors where this is where you do all your damage, or this is where you do the key movement that you really need to do.
Sure.
And those things go in there and mess it up. Now, on the flip side, which is kind of cool, I've had damage come in on my board that I then just kind of rolled with. Like when you turn 180 degrees, I'm like, okay, I can work with that. And you just kind of incorporate it, and you let it ride, because some of those damage cards actually provide more in the way of turning movement than a lot of the program cards, which is interesting.
Yeah. And once all the minions attack, there can be a special phase after that, depending, again, on the scenario. There's some dangerous sections on the board, and depending on what mission tells you what to do. And then it resets. You're going to do a draft again, but the drafts after the double draft at the beginning of the game, there's going to be 5 cards, no matter how many players.
Right. And
then the first player will get 2. Actually, we'll pick 1 around the board until there's 4 cards picked.
Right.
If that makes sense. So in a 4-player game, each player will get 1 and the start player will get 2.
Right.
And then one of them's discarded. All that's done under the timer. So you will have to draft in a specific amount of time, or you lose, or you gain the cards randomly.
Right. And one thing that we didn't mention, too, and this is mostly for people who aren't board gamers, all of this is done, we said it was cooperative. This is all done together.
Sure.
You know, so when you're drafting your card, there's a lot of like, does anyone need this? Oh, I'll take this. I really want this.
Yeah.
And you're making these decisions together, which is fun because it adds that extra tension. You're all under the clock. So the more you talk, the more time you're wasting. And there's been plenty of times when we've played where we ran out of time.
Sure.
And, it's really hard to enforce those rules on yourself, but we have. You end up having to just kind of like randomly take whatever's left.
Sure.
Hopefully you've gotten through and gotten at least a couple cards you need, though.
So I think we've explained the basics of the game. Now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in here that we don't really want to talk about, including when this massive guy comes out. This is a boss.
Yeah,
kind of like the antagonist for the entire game.
And for example, just to give you an idea of how secretive that is, he comes in this.
It's amazing. Yeah.
This is a box that's inside the box. It's actually sealed shut.
Yeah.
And like
don't open it. Don't show
with
him.
one of the scenarios,
Sure.
you open this up, and before that, all you get to see is through this little window his weapon.
Yeah.
So he is a bit of a spoiler alert on our board right now, but this is the level of sort of detail and excitement that they wanted to build into the game, and it really paid off.
So what are your thoughts?
Oh, I think it's amazing on many, many levels.
Yeah.
We
were blown away when we saw it. We were absolutely floored when we looked at this game.
I don't want to say too much more about the components because we could sit here and just drone on and on about that. But the
that
game
needs to be said because the board game industry as a whole, there's nothing that's ever been out. I mean, even these items here are metal.
Yeah.
Everything here is the highest production quality of any game we've ever seen. Even, the cardboard here is some of the thickest cardboard.
You really, like I said earlier, you can't go through this game and look for one element that you're like, they saved a little money here. This game is all out. Every aspect of it is top notch.
Yes.
So it is truly something to behold.
So gameplay wise, I like programming. I've always liked programming games. I know,
like I said earlier, though, some programming games can be frustrating because, especially when you're playing against each other. This reminds me a lot. Like one of my first ones was Robo Rally. It's the one I think a lot of people will compare to who have a vague understanding of the board game industry. And I still enjoy that, but I've played with a lot of people who, when something goes wrong, when someone pushes you and the whole rest of your program is completely messed up, it's very frustrating.
Sure.
Because you're all competing with one another.
Yeah.
When you're all in this together,
changes the dynamic of the game.
It changes that dynamic so that it's just more fun. I will say that you have to approach this game you have to embrace that chaos and get ready for a bumpy ride because these scenarios are not easy.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because the third scenario, I think, is one of the hardest ones. And almost right out of the gate, you are flooded with minions. So just be prepared for that. There's ways around it.
Yeah. You can get through it. And the thing, like, what I want to say is, even though it seems like so daunting, and you're probably going to fail on some of these, at the same time, it's so much fun because it's just so crazy.
Yeah.
Every time we put more minions out, because what Jeremy said earlier, they not only move, but then they spawn in almost every scenario. So you're just adding more and more minions. So the board is getting crazy. Your mech is doing half of what you want it to, half of what you don't want it to. But all of that is hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, I found myself, when my mech is like getting punished and I'm, I have no control, I'm still laughing and enjoying myself, which I wouldn't in some other games. And I think that's one of the things that they really nailed on this.
Yeah. I am not a programming guy. I've never liked programming games at all. If I see one, other way. This one, though, just like you said, it's the co-op aspect of it, which I typically love co-op games, and it's that fun factor. This is highly entertaining, even if your mech is going awry. What I will say is that it's really hard. Yep. What we've experienced, and I play a lot of co-op games, Black Orchestra, Freedom, Ghost Stories, Robinson Crusoe. This is one of the most challenging ones, just from the sheer number of things that you're trying to do at once. Typically in the game, you're trying to go out and get a bomb and defuse it, or get crystals and bring them back. And it can become really hard when your mech is going the wrong way and you have minions coming at you from another side.
Right.
So cooperation and teamwork and drafting the right cards at the right time and then slotting them. There's almost a progression in the game where in some of the scenarios you have to sit back and defend until you can get enough programs, because you're typically only drafting one command card per round.
Right.
So it doesn't give you a whole lot of flexibility at the start. It's a slow build.
It's a slow build, and you can't... And many of the scenarios, even after we played several times, your initial instinct is...
Go out and destroy.
Run in there and kill them.
Bad idea.
It's generally a bad idea in this game, because if you start with this board empty, and of course by, I don't know, the fifth or so round, you're going to have a good amount of cards here. Yeah. Some are going to be powered up.
Yeah.
Then... And if you've been able to do all that while defending the encroaching minions,
damage
then you can kind of move forward and just annihilate some
things. And the schematic cards help too. I know we briefly mentioned these, but these become unlocked the further you go and new schematics get entered in. Typically, you're only allowed to use 2 of these per mission, but you can use, going into a mission, you can decide which of the several schematics you wish to use for your character. And they give you all kinds of abilities, but they do only unlock when you've killed a specific number of minions or hit a specific area on the Team Gear track. So.
Right. And that is one thing we kind of glossed over. That minion thing that Jeremy mentioned earlier, when you kill 5 minions, you go up on sort of the experience track or the Team Gears. What's cool about that is it really makes killing the minions that much more fun. I mean, a lot of these games, you'll just have, okay, I took him out. But this one... You're taking him out, you're placing him over on this like little line of 5 spaces, and once you hit that 5th space, it's like, oh, nice, we went up. Oh, we got that unlocks this card.
Sure.
It makes just the natural aspect of playing a minis type game, a miniatures game, a little bit more entertaining.
And once you go through all of the scenarios, there is a hard mode as well that you can play through.
We haven't played the hard mode.
No, we have not.
That would be something, I'll tell you that. Although I think once you get through the whole thing, you'll have a sense for how you might want to approach the scenarios. So it's probably somewhat approachable anyway to try.
And on the flip side of that, if you're having trouble with a game, the scenarios have easy modes as well. Yeah. That will increase the amount of damage that your school can take, or the amount of damage that you have to inflict to the boss, which could be halved, and so forth. So, that's Mechs versus Minions. I'm so happy this game is finally out, that people can take a look at it.
Yeah, it's been hard to keep this under the lid. It is insanely cool. It's coming out very soon, which was
a huge surprise as well.
Hugely surprising, because this thing is done and ready to go. And it's also we didn't even talk about this, but the price point on this thing is insanely low given what you're getting. Yeah. That was probably one of the more shocking aspects when we first looked at it.
Right.
Is we were looking at it and go, your first thought is like, oh my gosh, how much does this cost?
Yeah.
I mean, you find out I can't remember. It's
think it's
like $80,
yeah.
something like that, which is shockingly
Yeah,
low in the board game
we've
industry.
been in the board game industry for a while now, and we know what competitive pricing is. At this price point, it's an insane value.
Oh yeah,
Beyond insane.
based on other comparable games out there, and I don't mean comparable in terms of quality, but some of the highest end games out there, you'd expect this thing to be
250, 300,
maybe over $300.
Yeah.
And no kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. And it's coming in at 80 is incredible.
And don't let that make your decision for you guys. The game is very, very fun. The
Right.
programming aspect is fun. It's a great game. It's going to challenge people. So if you like not competitive, but challenging cooperative games, this is the one for sure.
and a great mix of, like Jeremy said earlier, cooperative and programming is a unique combination that really has to be experienced for sure, because I've never seen it before, and it makes both of them a little bit more fun for me, both co-op and programming.
So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure that you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, make comments, let us know how you guys feel about the game or how you feel about Man vs. Meeple.
Absolutely. Any questions you have, let us know.
Sure, and we'll check you guys out next time. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye-bye.